Our average lifespan as human beings is pretty short compared to the age of the cosmos. To the universe, which has been around for 14 billion years, our meager 50 years go by faster than a tick on a clock. But 50 years are still pretty long by human standards. If you wake up in the morning and instead of going about your day like normal, you sit down and count every second that passes by on your clock, and you do that for an entire day, your average day will start to feel like a week. So 50 years can be a pretty large time frame. If you believe in the model of reincarnation, it would take quite a while before you can complete one human life and start another set of 50 years, provided that's the average lifespan for a human. But what if you've already lived this life before? This exact same life in which you've been raised by the exact same parents, gone to the same school, worked the same job, married the same spouse, and had the same kids. This exact moment that you're experiencing right now, where you're on your device and watching this exact video, has already been done before. Even this exact point in watching the video where you go, "What a load of bullcrap," and tune out has already been done by you previously. Oh, you're still here. Maybe you're still here, but you still have doubt. I don't want to believe it either. But let us focus on existence and nature for a minute and see how it might explain what I'm talking about. The one attribute of nature is that it must be absolutely infinite. Everything we've ever known or experienced in life have always been finite. Our knowledge is finite. Our five senses and our experiences of the senses are finite. Every object in existence assumes a finite form. Every attribute in existence is finite within a larger frame, and so on. But we can still come to the conclusion that nature is absolutely infinite. Because if all things are finite, it suggests that there are larger systems outside of them. And if all things must always have something larger than themselves, it means nature is absolutely infinite, because it is everything. You don't have to believe in what I'm saying, because there's no way I can prove it to you. But if this model of reality resonates with you, it only makes sense that if nature is absolutely infinite, then absolutely everything has already been created. Not only everything has already been created, but everything has already been experienced, not a few number of times, but an infinite number of times. This means you have already experienced this exact moment in your life, this exact moment at this time and in this space, not 2 or 3 times, but an uncountable infinite number of times. Why do you need to repeat the same process and experience the same thing over and over again? You don't. That's because you and I don't exist. The concept of the I is an illusion. There's only nature or absolute infinity existing as itself, and it has already done everything and experienced all possible forms of existence countless times, because it is everything, and it has no beginning or end. And since you are a finite representation of the whole, you too have already had the same experiences by extension. However, since nature is absolutely infinite, it would take you an eternity to ever be able to get back to experiencing this exact life again. An example that is most similar to this concept would be The Egg by Andy Weir. From this point forward, I'm going to spoil the story, so if you haven't read it yet, you can pause the video, go read it, then come back. It's very short and will only take 3 minutes to read from start to finish. The story is about a man who dies and finds himself in the afterlife, but the twist at the end is absolutely insane. So if you don't want to be spoiled, you can stop this video right now. Okay, you've been warned. Basically, The Egg is about a man who finds out that all of the people that have ever been born on Earth were actually him, and he incarnated as all of them one by one. I think that's a pretty crazy concept, but I want to make a few changes to make the story even more terrifying. At the end, when the man was about to be sent off, the man said, "Wait a minute, did you mention that you're not God, but just another being?" The being said, "I never said I was God. Does that mean you and I are not immortal? I never said that we are immortal. Our kind has been around for so long that it would be impossible to trace back to how it all began. But just because we haven't experienced death yet, doesn't mean that we cannot die like all the humans you incarnate. So we are immortal." The man thought to himself, "So what could possibly kill us?" He asked. "Food poisoning. That's lame. I thought you were going to say something crazy, like you have to desire death so you can cease to exist because no material object can puncture your skin and make you bleed, or something like that. Those things can kill us too. We can also die if we hold our breaths for too long. So we're identical to humans? How did we manage for so long?" Suddenly the man perked up his head as if he realized something. "If you and I were to die tomorrow, I know time doesn't apply here, but figuratively, if you and I were to die tomorrow, and we wake up in another place similar to this one, will we have to start all over again? No, I think we'll die for good. There's no reality higher than this one." "How do you know that?" "Back when I was on Earth, I used to believe the exact same thing, but here I am being proven completely wrong. If we die here, what's stopping us from being transported to another realm where we'll be doing a little life revision? Kind of like the way we're doing it now. I don't know, but there's no point in speculating." The man couldn't find any hint of uncertainty based on the tone of voice from the other being, nor could he guess what they're thinking when he looked at them. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't make out their facial features. It was like trying to study the face of people you see in a dream, although he's sure that he wasn't dreaming. In fact, the memory of his past with his wife and children were now starting to feel like something he'd imagined in his sleep. Ready to head back? The being asked him. Just give me a second. So you said we've been around since forever. Does that mean we did not have a beginning? No, we don't. So what? The being cut him off as if to quicken the pace of the conversation. The universe where Earth came from didn't have a beginning either. It just goes through cycles for billions and billions of years. If we're the universe, does that mean this conversation's already happened before? You're stalling. If a universe has no beginning or end, there must have been times when the universe repeats a cycle that it had gone through somewhere in the past. During these cycles, all of the events repeat themselves in the exact same way again. But since the universe is infinitely big and contains an infinite number of atoms, the being said to him hurriedly, like going through a script, it would take an eternity for all the atoms to move in the right pattern so that the universe would replicate one of its past cycles a second time. Then again, since the universe is truly eternal, it has already repeated this cycle more times than it can count, a number that is close to infinity. So we've already done this before. He half expected his shout to echo across the Black Sea around him, but they never came. That's right, but what changes would it make? How did they even remember what I was going to say after all of these years? He thought to himself. And so he became the Chinese peasant girl one more time. So that was the bootleg sequel to The Egg by Andy Weir. I hope it gave you some cool concepts to think about. A really good way to visualize eternity, like in the story above, is with a circle. The present moment will be a point on that circle. You know that you'll be back on that spot eventually, but no matter how far you move away from that spot, when you zoom out that circle far enough, it will always seem like you never left in the first place. You might be thinking that I'm making this up. Everybody knows that you only live once. Ideas of immortality, such as the concept of the afterlife in Christianity, or the idea of eternal recurrence, which was popularized by Friedrich Nietzsche, are just ways that man tries to cope with his own mortality. Because we know that we're all going to disappear someday, we invent these fairy tales so that we can feel more at ease when we lie down in our coffin. So you only live once. But what if you'd said the exact same thing in your past life, or the one before that, and the one before that, as well as the one before that? You probably believed in the afterlife and the one before that, but you were very skeptical of the idea during the life that came before that one, and also thought that you wouldn't have to come back after you were done. And you also believed that you'd die for good in the life before that as well. The idea that you'll be able to die is in itself wishful thinking, just as much as the idea that you'll be able to keep on living forever. Only this time we have the cool math equations and brain scanners to back it up and make it look more convincing. When life sucks, we find solace in death, but when life gets good again, and seek comfort in the idea of immortality. And don't tell me that all your previous lives are not you because you can't remember them. That'd be like saying if we punch a guy in the solar plexus and erase all of his memories, then punch him again, we won't have to feel guilty about our abusive act because he doesn't have to suffer much, since it will be a different person every time. I don't even need proof for the things I'm talking about. What's the difference between the idea that we only live once and the idea that there is an afterlife when scientists are literally telling us that we don't exist? The brain and body are made up of literal atoms just floating around in space. That thing we call consciousness or the self is just accumulated memories of the past. We use science to pursue objective reality. But what's even the point of objective reality when our very existence is an illusion? Our definition of objective reality is that it is something that sticks around for an extremely long time and doesn't change. That's pretty easy to do, you know? Just make a simulation on the computer, create some dumb laws, and make it last for a few billion years. Since it's a simulation, you can jump to whatever point you want in the time frame. All the NPCs in the program are going to call these laws objective reality, whatever that means, and then go extinct in the first couple thousand years. But here's the crazy part. We can give input and tell them what to think as well as how to feel. We can put thoughts like, I'm existing, so I have free will, directly into their heads through the text box command.
Like this person, and see what the agent is doing, right? If you come down to the page, so for example, for Tom, that's the current time and everything. Here's the personality, so he's rude, aggressive, and energetic, and this is the one paragraph description that they provided for each agent, and they even give it a lifestyle. So this is pretty nice, so really detailed, right? And then like whatever the daily requirements are, right? And if you go down to the page, so this is like all the interaction Tom has had so far. Here is how this interaction could look like. So John, good morning, Eddie. Did you sleep well? Eddie, good morning, Dad. Yeah, I slept great. John, that's great. What are you working on today? And Eddie is saying, I'm working on a new music composition for my class. It's due this week. So these are kind of normal human interactions that you would expect. Either you can communicate with the agent through conversation. So let's say you can pose like someone and interact with them, or by issuing directive to the agent in the form of inner voice. And this inner voice really controls the behavior of your agent. So for instance, when told you are going to run against Sam in the upcoming election by a user as John's inner voice, so John's decide to run in the election and share his candidacy with his wife and son, right? So that is a way of you can control and manipulate the environment and behavior of these agents.
If we humans can make something as simple as that, what's stopping nature from pulling off this humble feat by itself? The problem here is that when we uninstall the program, the NPCs don't really quote-unquote die because they're made of energy. That energy is going to turn into some other form of consciousness in the future, just like how it has always been. So everything has already been done and has been experienced an infinite number of times. What are the implications? And how will this little piece of knowledge affect your daily lives? What do you want in life? Like really? What are the things that you really desperately want in life? We all want something. Sometimes the things we want can be either really simple or incredibly abstract, but we all want something. That car that you want so bad. That dream house you wish you will be able to live in one day. That dream job you've been thinking of year after year. How about relationships? The perfect partner that you hope you'll one day stumble upon in the streets or through social media. The one who can read your thoughts and finish every sentence you say. Who always laughs at the unfunny jokes that you spent years perfecting. The one who will smile and look lovingly into your eyes whenever you run out of things to say and things get quiet for a long time. Who tells you that you're wrong when you say that you are unlovable and pathetic, and tells you that you're the greatest thing that has ever happened to them. You might dream of those perfect date nights, or even the perfect marriage with the perfect spouse and having the perfect kids. Or maybe you just want better relationships overall on the platonic side of things. Better friendships, more meaningful bonds with new people. Maybe you want things that are more abstract, like the mastery of a skill or an art, or to push the envelope and break new grounds in a particular field. You might want to contribute more to the world through service and charity. Your greatest desire might be something really simple, like to be happy or to be at peace with yourself. You might have great visions for the world, like a civilization of infinite abundance for everyone, or maybe even something really big, like the permanent end of suffering for all beings in existence. There's a chance you're spiritually inclined and you desire enlightenment, to forever be free from the illusion of separation and become one with God. I'm here to tell you that there's a high chance that you've already done all of it. You've already lived these potential realities and experienced these things you crave. Not 1, 2, 100, or 100,000 times, but an infinite number of times in the past. How long were you doing each of these little activities? It depends on how you were feeling at the time. If you wanted to be a billionaire, sometimes you'd live out this reality for a couple of years, got sick of it, and then went on to do something else. Other times you might be a billionaire for an eternity, but you've gone down both of these routes, and you've done them to death for God knows how many times. The fact that you were able to redo something again and again, even though you were supposed to do it once because the timeline lasts for a literal eternity, makes absolutely no sense, but you pulled it off anyway. How do you even repeat an eternity anyway? It's insane to think about the idea that you've achieved enlightenment, stayed in that state literally forever, got out of it, then repeated the process all over again. And you've done this an infinite number of times. When I say that each of these iterations lasts for an eternity, I absolutely mean it. When time itself is eternal and has no beginning or end, you can just put more eternities in the middle of it, and there won't be any difference. It's similar to the process of adding the number infinity to the number infinity itself. You'll always get the number infinity no matter what you do, unless you multiply or divide infinity with zero, but you get the point. Zero doesn't represent an existing quantity, but a non-quantity, or a no thing, so it shouldn't count. So you've become enlightened an infinite number of times already. You've spent eternities after eternities in every kind of heaven and every form of hell, along with all the uncountably infinite forms of existence that are both within and beyond all the dualities and pluralities in this world we humans can perceive. I know the whole thing sounds conceited and even delusional, so let me just clarify a few things. Technically, it's his nature who has created and experienced all of them, because you and I do not exist. There is only nature existing as itself and by itself. It is the subject, the object, and everything in between. Even the very concepts of the subject and object were also made up by nature. Just like everything else, we're only characters in its dream, playing out the randomly generated script that we were given. So it's not that you've already done and experienced everything an infinite number of times, but you and I don't even exist. Nature, on the other hand, exists, and it has done everything already. I don't know how you're feeling, but I personally cannot turn back on this worldview, just because the scale of it is too big and it just sounds impossible. But then again, why should there be anything impossible for nature at all? Nature was the one who came up with the very concepts of the possible and the impossible in the first place. But regardless of whether you've already realized these dreams infinite times before, these are still very beautiful dreams. I'm referring to the ones about the cars, houses, loving friends and spouses, peaceful and prosperous communities, eternal and perfect union with God and existence, and so on. I'm not going to tell you to stop wanting things and to turn away from your desires because they're what make life interesting. You can choose to want something without attaching any meaning or significance to it, no matter how big it is, because nature's already done them all. The only reason why these dreams and visions matter so much to you is because the script of natural conditioning tells you to feel that way. When dreams lose all meaning, you can choose to dream just for the sake of it, simply because it's fun to do so, regardless of whether they can come to fruition or not. That's up to nature to decide, and nature can be pretty arbitrary at times. All the rules are made up anyway. Every trip has a destination. Even when there is no set destination and you're just coasting along the highway, the trip will become a meta-destination in itself. And just like how an eternity has no beginning or end, there'll always be a new destination after the last. So just sit back, relax, pull out the map, and pick a new spot that you'd like to go to.